Our first guest is Jeraldine Phneah, is a tech worker and a millennial content creator who shares ideas on how we can accelerate our growth, achieve balance, and give back to the community. I think what really drew me to Jeraldine is that outside her corporate job, she passionately shares her journey on LinkedIn. And she's consistently sharing her insights, what she needed to do to get better at what she does and to navigate the corporate world, even as a young person. Drawing on her own experiences, she will share valuable tips on how to intentionally design a career you're proud of, manage upwards, very important, and building a good relationship with your bosses, as well as practical tips on how to assess a company's culture in order to craft a career you actually enjoy. She will also provide actionable advice to help you find meaning and purpose in your work and your life. So, without further ado, can you put a round of applause for Jeraldine? Yay! Oh, you look very colorful today.
Because the brief said, don't wear like black, right? So
yeah, 100%. This shows your vibrance. Hi, Jeraldine.
Hi,
how are you?
Good, although we just spoke like 15 minutes ago before you came on stage.
Yeah. Okay, can you give a brief introduction about yourself? I mean, I did give a very elaborate intro of the amazing things you're doing in work and on LinkedIn as well, but maybe you can share a little bit about yourself also.
Sure. So first of all, to everyone who's here, welcome and thank you for taking time off your Saturday afternoon to join us. My name is Jeraldine. If you have trouble pronouncing my last name, it's actually pronounced as Phneah. So you can think like Tau Sa Phneah or the Hokkien song, right? Ai Phneah Zai, yeah? Yeah, that's how you actually pronounce my last name. So I'm a tech worker, but on the side I also create content. And specific, to content creation, I really focus a lot on how our generation can really overcome challenges and fulfill our aspirations. So I cover a broad range of topics, including health, building our finances, navigating workplaces and our careers, and really all about like self-improvement and growth also. So that's really what I touch on. Yeah.
So to you, what is a career you're proud of? How does it look like?
So that's a great question, right? Because I saw a lot of people have different answers. And the truth is actually, what is the ideal career to you would actually evolve over time as you grow and develop as an individual. So for me, right now, I've been looking back at the past maybe 8-9 years in the workforce. I would say that I actually built the career I'm proud of, but it has not always been this way. I guess that when I first began, I didn't know, right, what like an ideal career would actually look like. So I was looking around at different options out there and feeling really lost, in the earlier days or so. And back then, what I had in mind was that I wanted something with work-life balance, so I can spend more time with family. And I also wanted something that would be impactful, so that I can actually give back to the community. But right now, you can see that what I'm doing for a career is actually drastically different from, that two objectives that I had in mind. So this type of expectations will evolve and grow over time as you grow older, right? Like maybe at the start of the career, financial independence, building wealth and all that could be very critical for you as you lay the bricks in your foundation, you buy a BTO and all that. But subsequently that would evolve.
Yeah, so the question would be like, how do you know what's important to you at this phase of your life versus that phase? Any phase in your life, how do you know what's important to you? Are there any reflection questions that you ask yourself or any journaling question that you ask yourself to identify what's most important to you at this point in time in terms of career?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, when it comes to finding out what you want, what I have found useful is actually starting off with what you don't want first. So it's doing the inversion, right? Like, what do I not want?
I think a lot of people can immediately think of some things in their mind. I don't want this.
Yeah. So some of you may not want to, travel a lot for work, right? Because you have other commitments here. Some of you may not want to work in an environment with a lot of rules. So you have to define for yourself, right? Like, what are the non-negotiables for you? Like for me, I have a very clear non-negotiable, and I'm very upfront with every interviewer about this. I don't want those kind of job that I have to zun report at 9 o'clock, and then I have to leave like on the dot at, cannot leave before 6.
But how do you know that, like, that's very specific?
Yeah.
So you have been in companies that require that, and then you know it's not what you want.
Yes, I've been in those type of situations and encountered those type of like...
So I think one insight that we draw here is also that your past work experience, if thinking back about it, you feel some negative emotions arising, that's actually a hint to what you don't want. So allowing that to influence and direct your decisions moving forward is very important as well. Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So first of all, I think defining what you don't want and then listening to the inner voice, right? And the emotions to tell you like what's the things that you can stand and cannot stand.
Okay. And what had to happen in order for it to evolve? So you mentioned that the definition of what a career is in terms of how you're proud of it, like it will evolve over time. What were the trigger points or the factors that made it evolve?
I guess as you progress in your life, you will enter different life stages and you have different goals, right? So that actually influences your careers because a lot of people think that career is actually something that is in silo. But the truth is that your career, the income that you get from it, and also the type of nature of the job actually impacts your lifestyle and your overall life happiness a lot. So what I find useful is also always thinking about my life and then the part that the career plays in it.
Yeah. I think this is really important that we're having this conversation because even though the theme is building a career you're proud of, I feel like the bigger question is building a life you're proud of, right? Relationships, your mental health, your physical health, the person that you are. How can you be a person that you're proud of? Yeah, okay, now I want to dive deeper into some practical tips because what really blew my mind, I don't know if I mentioned this in the intro, but Jeraldine has actually been promoted in every job you have worked at or achieved like amazing results, like every single job, which kind of blew my mind. It's like, wow, you know? So my question is, how do you excel in your career despite being young? Or is age never an issue? Has that ever been a concern?
Age is not an issue if you are in that kind of environment that doesn't value age. Because there are corporate environments that actually value seniority or the number of years that you work. So you have to choose the kind of game that you want to play. Yeah.
So I guess the question is, how do you identify if the company suits you and who you are in this moment? Like if you're a young person, how do you find a company that would embrace that?
There are a couple of ways to identify the correct company for you. So a lot of us might just look at things at a very superficial level. Like we will just go to the website and then we will see the corporate values like, oh, okay, these corporate values align with me as a person. So, and then this company sounds cool, so I want to join. But the truth is that how many companies truly practice their values, right? So the corporate values are simply words on a website if they are not practiced in terms of values itself. So we have to look at a few things. Number one, who do they hire and promote? Because the decisions about who they promote to leaders and hire tells you a lot about the nature of the organization and the kind of values that they have. Do they hire promote based on age, race, nationality, or do they actually award results, right? So you need to decide like where are your strengths and then what kind of environment do you want to be in that actually can bring out these strengths that you have. That's one. So another area to look at when it comes to looking for a good job and good company is also the direct manager that you have, because this person is actually responsible for maybe more than 50% of your job happiness.
I'm wondering in the audience whether people are thinking, oh my gosh, I don't like my direct manager. Okay, don't need to blink twice. Okay, if you need help, I'm kidding. Okay.
So the identifying your direct manager is and actually evaluating that person during the job interview is very, very critical, and it's a very critical step.
Wow,
that a lot of
evaluating the person.
Yeah.
You know, before you share the questions, I think that's a very powerful perspective to have. Is that in an interview, you are also evaluating the employee, the company, and the management, and it's not just them evaluating you. Because I don't know how many young people feel that way. Like when I speak to young people, a lot of them, when you go into an interview, they immediately think, oh, I'm the one being assessed, and they kind of forget to assess the company as well. Yeah, so I think that mindset is very powerful. How do we assess the management and the company to see if it's the right fit?
So I think the first point I covered was really more about looking at who they hire, who they promote, who they select as leaders, because that actually sets the tone for the entire organization. And the second point that I was talking about is actually your own direct manager. It's very important. It's very natural in the interview to feel that you are the one being assessed, but an interview is actually a two-way street where you have to really use the time to ask very critical questions to determine or not whether this is a person you can work with or not. So I'm really lucky in a sense, like I think my past 3 roles, the hiring manager for Salesforce, Bocado, and then Sport itself, I was actually able to select really good managers. And it starts with asking them the correct questions. So let me give you something practical and actionable you can use. You can ask this person, like, why do they want to be a manager, right?
Wait, that's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
I'm like, who has the balls to ask that? You ask the manager that, okay, so, okay.
Yeah. Just ask them, like, why do they want to be in management? Because the way they answer this question would tell you everything that you need to know about who they are and their values, right? If they say, like, they like to coach, if they say because, they encountered some previous horrible managers before and they want to create good workplaces for other people, I think these are great answers, right? And I have felt impressed when I heard some of these answers. But if they tell you things like, oh, because, I want to show that I can do big things, or it hint in some way that they like power and control, that maybe there's a bit of a red flag. Yeah.
How do you hear the hints and the red flags that someone likes power and control?
They could say things like, I want to show others that I can achieve big things at a young age, and then they see like being in power as bad. Yeah, of course, not to say that wanting power and control is a bad thing, but if that's your main and core motivation, then I feel that doesn't really align to me as a person. Yeah.
So what are you looking for? What are the green flags?
It depends on the stage of life that you're at. So I'm looking at the audience, and either you guys have amazing genetics or you're all really young.
We have amazing genetics because Asians don't raise it.
Yeah. So I guess at the early stage of your life, you would like someone who can actually coach, right? Who can actually is willing to teach and impart their knowledge. If not, someone who can actually remove obstacles for you so that you can actually hit your KPI and do well at work as well.
Okay, so you look for that in an interview, basically. So there is a question, what is the greatest challenge you face in your career?
I guess it was being laid off for the first time. That would actually be
laid off.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. One of my previous roles actually let go. And that was really a not really surprising experience because they were actually like letting go people on a very regular basis. So it was just like my turn. And that's the risk I choose to take by joining startups most of the time as well. That was really challenging for me because at that point in time, I had like a few obligations, right? Like I was thinking like, oh no, how am I going to pay for mortgage? What am I going to do? And all that. And at that point in time, layoff was not like a popular thing to talk about. Nowadays, I go LinkedIn every day. I open people talking about like being let go.
Yeah, and it becomes a LinkedIn content.
Yeah, LinkedIn content. This is a very accepted thing. But at that point in time, back then, this was actually before COVID. So it wasn't really a very acceptable thing to talk about and discuss openly. So that was very challenging because it was a very isolating type of experience. But something I learned from that situation is that we cannot control, right? Like a lot of things. Like the decisions that management make, when they cannot perform, then it's the people who are below who get, who have to suffer the consequences.
That's
right?
so frustrating, right?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. So a lot of things we cannot control. But what we can actually control, right, is our own ourselves. So there's this quote that I really love. A bird sitting on a tree is not afraid of the branch breaking because her confidence is not on the tree branch itself, but on her own wings.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a quote that I actually like live by and think, it's very, very powerful because just like, the economic situation is the branch, right? Competency of the management to deliver results is also the branch itself. And you cannot control this branch whether it breaks or not.
Powerful. Because I think everybody here probably feared failure at least once in their life, right? Yes? And failure is something really scary because we're going to think like, oh, I'm going to get judged. I'm not going to get back up again. But this analogy encapsulates the lesson so perfectly. Even if you fail in that one business or you get laid off in that one particular job, you have retained the skill sets that will allow you to excel in the next one. It's kind of like a game where you still retain your XP when you move on to the next level. Even if you don't manage to kill the boss, you revive again, and then you have an XP left to actually kill the boss again. It's kind of the analogy as well, and I love that you live by that perspective. It's a powerful one.
Yeah, correct. So continuing on the analogy, the branch is all the external environments, but your wings is your skills, your network, and what she describes as the XP, the assets that you have, which you can use to keep yourself afloat. And of course, being responsible with savings and finances also.
Yeah, I think to even take a step back, how do we lead the conversation as well during an interview and be confident in leading it?
There's two parts to this question. One is the interview itself, right? And then there's the finding out about a company's values and how good a management is. There's a couple of ways you can do it outside of the interview. So a couple of things that you can look at is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my favorite stalking tool, right?
Stalking tool.
Because you can see these people, how long they joined the company, what did they achieve, right? That helps them to get promoted and all that. And the second thing that I like to look at is also Glassdoor. So now, bear in mind, Glassdoor reviews can actually be deleted and can be fake as well. Like some companies, they will post positive reviews or ask the interns or the people who just joined for 1 or 2 years, 1 or 2 months to write, right, when they're still in their honeymoon phase. So bear in mind that Glassdoor is not 100% accurate. But I always believe there's no smoke without fire. So every time there's negative reviews, I would pay attention to it and then try to dig a little bit more. Something I also like to do is actually reach out to employees who left, because these people can actually provide me some insights. If they refuse to help, or not refuse to help, but refuse to share their experiences, then something is a bit off. Yeah, correct.
Wow, that's really smart.
Yeah. So this is the outside of the interview portion. And then as for the questions you can ask in the interview, typically at the end of the interview, the interviewers will always ask you if you have any questions for them or for the organization, about the organization. So that's when you can ask them okay, you don't have to be so direct, why do you want to be a manager? You can frame it nicely first, I see, you have progressed so you're doing so well.
You make them, feel good first.
Yeah, and then after that, it's what makes you want to move into this management path? So that's how you can actually
Nice.
How to say 包装?
Frame package it.
Package
You frame the question as you are genuinely interested and not assessing and interviewing them, right?
Yeah, correct. It's about
the tone of voice as well matters. That's a good point. Does that answer your question?
Oh, one more thing that I recommend my friends to do is to ask for a culture round. So ask for an extra round where you can meet the team and the people who you're going to work with, because that will actually give you some insights into the individuals. And she has actually tried it recently and turned down an offer because she felt that the team wasn't very bonded and she will not be able to vibe well with the colleagues, which was an important part for her in assessing a job also.
Wow, a culture round.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so powerful. Okay, thanks so much for sharing that. How do we proactively design our career? Example, in the types of projects, work-life balance, when my colleagues seem obliged to accept what they get. So when the people around you in the company, that means you're already in the company, your colleagues are accepting the OT, they're basically kind of accepting everything they get. How do you put your foot down or define and set boundaries of what you want?
Okay, I don't know the specific situation, but let me just answer based on my understanding of the question. Basically, what this person is describing is that in your environment, a lot of people are just accepting OT, accepting boring projects, and then you feel you have to follow the crowd. So I think something to bear in mind is that actually you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So if you don't even try, you are not, if you don't try, you have 0% chance of getting the interesting projects you want. But if you actually put in an effort to ask, you may be rejected, but you increase your odds maybe 20%, 30%. So doesn't it make sense to proactively ask for certain projects and to explain why you might be the best person for this particular project also? That's one. Second, around work-life balance, I'm just imagining in my mind that this person is in an office whereby everyone end their work time at 8:30.
Very late, maybe even later.
Yeah, or maybe even later. Whereas this person is more inclined to focus on work-life balance and everything. So it's useful to have a conversation with your manager again and ask hey, how do you define success in this role, right? What does good look like to you? Because if this manager is just replying with I define a good employee as someone who works until 12 a.m. every day and then come to work at 8 a.m., then I think that's a misalignment of the values that you have with the organization again, right? So it goes back to the importance of evaluating a company's culture and then also asking the correct questions during the interview to really see if there's a value alignment. Because just like marriages work out because values are aligned, the same goes with you and a company also.
Yeah, one thing that stood out to me the most since the time we were on Zoom call and even through this conversation is that the power lies in the question. Because when you ask the right questions, It will allow you to know the person better. It will allow you to understand the person's values, priorities, and if they are managing you or if they are the one step above you, then that would literally kind of paint a picture of how life would be like for you in that company. So it's so important to ask the right questions from the start, and not when you enter the company, then you're like, okay, wait, you know, and then you're kind of like a fish out of water kind of feeling. So it's so powerful that you ask these questions before, and also you're not afraid of having a culture around and all of that. Because I feel like one thing that I would imagine younger people have a fear of is that there's not enough jobs. I need to get this job. I'll just accept it. But the fact that you're willing to ask for a next round, you're willing to ask to meet the management and lengthen the process of analyzing if the company is right for you and if you are right for the company, that is actually a very courageous move. And I'm wondering, why are you able to do that? Is there a mindset that you have that allows you to give yourself time to assess the company and not feel like you need to just take the job?
So number one, it boils back to fundamentals. I think having enough savings is extremely helpful because it gives you that kind of safety net. So being a financially responsible person who doesn't overspend and who has like significant savings will give you that confidence, right, to take bold steps and to ask, you know, to say no to jobs even. Yeah, that's one. Secondly, I think it's important to understand for yourself like what you want. So when I take a new job, I want to be successful and I want to stay and build for long term, you know, and everything. So that's why being able to ask the right questions is important to me because these are the things that I prioritize, right? So it's about like what do you value in a job, right? If you really value being successful and you really value staying, you know, and building something for long term, then asking these kind of questions would be the fear of asking questions would be less versus that.
Yeah, I think one thing that stood out to me is when you said long term. Ultimately, when we're building a career we're proud of, it is a long-term thing that involves multiple jobs and multiple milestones along the way. So I think that there's a different mindset between looking at one job in silo and like, oh, you know, this is the job and you're putting in full focus on that thing versus seeing how this job plays in the larger picture of your entire career. Like the different perspective that you have on A and B will really determine like what questions you ask during the interview as well. How do you continuously find meaning in the work you do, both in your work and your hobbies like writing on LinkedIn, etc.? Okay, wait, while you think of that, I want to do something. So you think about that first. For the two people that asked your question, so Harbinder and Li Qian, right? Sorry? Li Ting. I want to give you both a prize, or rather a gift. So can we give the gifts that Crystal will be coming? Crystal, okay, great. So the gifts is something that I personally would love to use, our productivity sheet by Revel, which is one of our supporting partners. So you can take a look at it. Every day you can write down the top tasks that you like to do, and it'll keep you really on task. And after you're done with the day, you just rip it off and recycle. Okay, and then go to the next particular page. So Revel is our supporting partner for that. Later we'll probably have the slide, and they have gifted us those beautiful paper products. So thank you for asking a question. Yay. Okay, so back to you, Jeraldine, the last and final question.
I thought that this would be the gifts because it was on.
No, we leave it here for 5 minutes. You know? Yeah, no, it looks good here. So yeah, how do you is there any habits or any affirmations or anything that you do in your everyday life to make sure that you're seeking meaning in the work you do?
There's two parts to this question, right? First of all, I want to take a step back and look at this concept of meaning first before I answer this question.
Yeah.
So meaning was something that I thought that only a job can provide me when I graduated. Like that's why I wanted a meaningful job. I think I want to work in public service because that's the most meaningful thing that anybody can do, right? But I realized that meaning doesn't have to come from work. It can come from outside of work. And because I work in a more corporate startup kind of job, the meaning for me comes from outside of work, right? Like for example, volunteering during my spare time, and also being a creator is a huge source of
on LinkedIn, writing.
Writing is a huge source of meaning for me. And then gradually, I can also find meaning from the small things at work. For example, I work in software, so every time like our customers implement a software, they can see significant cost savings. That is something that gives me a lot of meaning also, because I know that every time they reduce their cost drastically, I can actually save someone's job.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I actually tell myself. Yeah.
But, so you know the impact of your work. I think
I
seeking
know the
to
impact
understand
of
the
work.
impact is important.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Then that's
So
one
what is the habit that you instill in your life to remind yourself of the meaning of your work then?
I think you mean like staying motivated?
Yeah, how do you constantly remember the bigger picture, especially when times get tough?
This is not for everyone, but generally I like to journal. So I will journal like every day or week. And sometimes I post these journal notes on my IG stories also, because I'm thinking, right, and I write. And then I find that writing is a process that helps me to connect to the inner part of me.
I love this. I journal every day too.
Yeah.
And I feel like we don't listen to our inner voice enough. We listen to a lot of what people say, complaints, advice, mentors telling us do this, do that, but we forget to listen to our inner voice.
Yeah.
And journaling allows us to lean in and listen.
Because listening to your inner voice is a very powerful thing. Instinct is a very powerful thing. Women instinct. I don't know whether guys...
No, guys have also.
Guys have also, right?
I
Everybody
hope
have.
for that.
Yeah. Everyone has instinct. So it's like, if you lean on your inner voice, right? It sounds very abstract, but it can actually guide you on the correct direction to,
I love that.
to take. Yeah.
Do you have a final message for our audience over here?
I think two things. One thing I wanted to mention, but I didn't get a chance to, is actually this topic of false trade-offs. So we would think like, we would have false trade-offs in our mind, right? Like, for example, if I want to have time for my family, means I need to get a job that is not, is not high paying. But that doesn't, there's a false trade-off, because there are people who have time for families and also are earning well, right? So try to look at some of these false trade-offs in your mind and to remind yourself about them. So that's one. The second thing I wanted to emphasize just now is that like mixing with the motivated and I may not correct people, but like inspirational people. I feel it's constantly important to really evaluate your friend group, right? And also like the people you spend time with, be it colleagues and all that, to see like, hey, do I want to be like these people, right? Do I admire them? Do I feel inspired by them? And then if not, then where do you find like this group of people? So for me, sometimes I'm not able to get that kind of inspiration in the workplace. So I actually spend a lot of time with my end customers, because I feel that they are very, very driven and doing big things and are changing the world. Or I go for events.
Yeah.
I go by myself, so I force myself to talk to
New people, make
people,
friends, you're not sticking with your same group of people all the time.
Correct.
Thank you so much, Jeraldine, for being with us here today. I hope you enjoy yourself as much as I enjoyed the conversation. Do you guys enjoy that conversation? Yay! Thank you so much, Jeraldine.